Good evening. This is the Curriculum Committee meeting, Monday, March 13th. Call the meeting to order. Are there any public comments on the agenda? There. Okay, thank you. Turn it over to Rosemary.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March Curriculum Committee meeting of the board. In front of everybody, you are going to see a lovely invitation, and I am going to ask Maria Willichuk to talk a little bit more about our district art show.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick plug for next week's district art show on Wednesday, the 22nd. We will be hosting our art show at the new middle school for all to see, and you have an invitation there in front of you that was created by 7th grader Claire Reed. The theme for this year is the art of belonging, and Claire said that what inspired her to create this particular image is that it came from her best friend. She inspired me because she makes me feel like I belong. I feel the nature accepts everyone, and hands and person represent the idea that everyone is different but should be accepted. And the other image, other young lady that you see there, that is Brianna Price. She is an 8th grader, and she is going to be responsible. Her image will be on the signage that you see throughout the school on that particular evening. Her quote is that when I think of belonging, I think of being in a place that makes me feel safe and free. And so her image represents those two things. So that is one of our themes as we try to promote our equity, belongingness, and inclusion this year. And we're very proud of those girls and the work that they have done. So this is just a quick plug, invitation for you. We hope that we get to see you there. And it will also be on display for another 2 days after the actual evening of the art show. And then everything on Friday will be closing.
Thank you very much. So this evening's agenda, you will notice we are going to talk about our Title I programs, both at Conshohocken Elementary School and Plymouth Elementary School. We are going to continue with our conference showcase, which many of our participants that are here this evening just got back from our Title I conference, as well as our Pete and C conference. And then we are going to talk briefly about our virtual programming here in the Colonial School District and give you some updates. And then we have 2 conference requests for your review this evening. All right, Mrs. Wilczek again.
Yep. Well, thanks, everyone. I am the Federal Programs Coordinator for the Colonial School District. This is the 8th year that I have had that responsibility. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit in general about federal programs themselves, and then we'll delve deeper into Title I, and I'll be asking building principals and our teachers to share out a little bit. So for those of you that aren't aware, our Title I funding and all of our federal funding really comes from ESSA, not to be confused with ESSERS, but ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act that was formerly known as No Child Left Behind. That particular act provides the largest funding for any educational program from the federal government. And what that does is it looks at numbers of students that are below income or in higher percentages of not being successful, and then provides financial assistance to help those schools so that they can help those children meet some of the more challenging issues that they have in terms of their academic. ESSA itself is actually divided into 4 different grants. And you might be familiar with some of these titles, but not actually know what they do. So we're speaking about Title I funds, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. The difference between each of these, as you can see from there, is that Title I, the funds are what are dedicated for students for their academic learning. Title II is for teachers strictly, mostly professional development or sometimes class size reduction. And Title III, I think we're hearing about next month, correct, is for our Ls and immigration students. And then Title IV is kind of like a block grant. It's for school-wide programs, and that can really be used for a bunch of different things. Tonight, we're going to be primarily focusing on Title I, but in general, all of these funds have some overlying priorities. One, you can't use the funds to pay for things that are required to be implemented automatically by the state or by the local laws. So in other words, your funds can't supplant. We'll go into that a little bit deeper in a little bit. There also needs to be a written methodology in order to explain the process for allocating these funds, and we do have that as something that our business office provides for us. We have a per pupil allocation to make sure that as a district, we provide a consistent education for all students. Thirdly, they have to have written performance goals that we are expected to achieve a specific outcome, and we have to report out on those. And in addition to that, lastly, we have to follow Uniform Grant Guidance, also known as UGG. for our fiscal management. So we have to make sure that I know it's a funny name, but we have to make sure that we stay within the thresholds in our spending to make sure that we are following the procurement. The other thing that these funds allow is that there's something called transferability. And the reason why I'm mentioning this right now is because this is something that we as a district take advantage of. Transferability allows you to take funds from one of those 4 grants that I just mentioned and put them into one of the other grants. So, for example, you can take monies from Title II or Title IV, and you can put them into Title I if there's a greater need for your students, per se, than there is for your teachers for professional development. Title IV funds are not a huge amount of funds. And because we have to share some of those funds with other schools, we actually transfer our Title IV funds into Title I, and that helps us to support students with having more staff in those Title I buildings. The other thing that's really important with all of these funds is stakeholder engagement. If you have had students that are in any of these Title I buildings, hopefully you have had PTO meetings, parent engagement nights, additional resources, and things of that nature. And also, we're able to give feedback to the schools on what you would like to see done with these funds or what other activities or resources you would like to be provided for your students. That stakeholder engagement is key. And without that, you would be out of compliance. So you'll probably hear a little bit more about stakeholder engagement as well. Now, in particular with Title I, as I said before, it is the largest federally funded education program. The purpose of it is to help low-achieving students achieve high academic standards. There is a supplemental and educational assistant mainly in math and reading. That is the primary focus, although in recent years, they've been allowing schools to spend on things such as culture, inclusivity, and STEM. The 2 main models that they have are something called school-wide program and targeted program. We're going to talk a little bit more about those as well. Both of our Title I schools that we have in this district are school-wide programs. The way that the schools receive the funds is that they're awarded based on a formula of your low-income students. Now, for us, that's our free and reduced lunch. Those free and reduced lunch numbers are determined in October of the previous school year. So, for example, next year's allocation will be based on our free and reduced numbers in October of the 22-23 school year, generating the money for the 23-24 school year. The federal government gives the funds to the states, and then the states give them to the LEAs, the local education agencies, which is what we are. And then the schools with the high percent of low-income students get those monies and they disperse them as they need to. You can use those funds in a couple of different ways. If you are a school that has 40% or more that qualify for free and reduced lunch, then you qualify for a school-wide program. Those do not have 40% free and reduced lunch are what is called a targeted program. Now, we don't have 40% free and reduced lunch in any of our schools. However, we have grandfathered ourselves in so that we are considered a school-wide program, and we've actually asked the state if we could have school-wide programs instead of targeted assisted programs, and they have granted us that. In the past couple of years since the pandemic, our number of free and reduced lunch students has gone down, and we believe that that is because during the pandemic, everybody qualified for free and reduced lunch. And so we saw a really big drop in the past couple of years in our percentage, and now we're starting to see that rise up again. And our schools have been working very, very hard in making sure that parents complete that form so that we have accurate numbers of who really is free and reduced lunch. So hopefully that will have an impact on next year's allocation. So very quickly, I mentioned this before. The allocation itself, one of the main things that we have to ensure is that we are not supplanting. And what that means is that Title I funds cannot be used in such a way that if the district provides it to all of the other schools, the district needs to provide it to all of the schools. The Title I funds are used to provide additional resources and supports for those schools beyond what the district already offers. So, for example, let's say we got a new resource for all of our elementary schools, but we want to save money, and we know that we have Title I money coming in for Conshohocken. We can't just take the Title I money and buy that same resource for Conshohocken when the district has bought it for everybody else. We have to make sure that the district buys it for everyone, and then we buy something in addition to that to support those students. So that is a very, very important thing. The second thing is about the parent and family engagement requirements, as I mentioned before. The buildings are going to talk a little bit about some of the events that they do for parents, but in addition to that, there's also a parent compact, which every year the building principals and the parents that are represented in their Title I teams go through, and also a Title I policy. It's not a board policy, but it's a policy that they create for each of those schools. So the other two things I just quickly wanted to mention, because if you ever do see the numbers in terms of what our funding is, we are an LEA, so we are a local educational agency. That means we get all of the money for Title I, II, III, and IV for us, but not just for ourselves, also for our non-public schools and our neglected institutions. And if you weren't aware, we have Martin Luther, Gemma, not too far. That is our neglected institution. Over $100,000 of our allocation automatically goes to them, and that supports their summer program. So although sometimes people think we have a larger number of Title I funds, it's not solely for ourselves. It's also for those schools. That includes our Title II funds and our Title IV funds. So everybody gets a little piece of that. The money goes through us, it's vetted, and then we disperse it to the other entities that receive some of the funding.
Neglected is not our term.
No, it's not our
Neglected.
term. That is state.
We work, Mrs. Burke's office works very closely with Gemma, and so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. No.
That's a term to disperse federal money.
Yes.
How many kids, if you know, or Mike, do you know, are non-public that are qualified to get our funds?
I do know that. For Title I?
Yeah.
Currently this year, there's actually only one student. And the reason why that is because the Title I funds are generated by the students that live within the geographic area, and then the funds follow the student regardless of where they go. So a kid could go all the way into the city to St. Joe's Prep, but if they live in this area and they qualify for free and reduced lunch, those funds would follow them. But because our program is K through 3 for Title I, we only will provide for students that also meet the requirements of our program.
Does that student need to live in the boundaries of either
Conshohocken or
PE
Plymouth.
or Conshohocken?
Correct.
Okay,
They
so we
do.
only have one.
Right now, currently, we only have one that qualifies.
And is that a private school or a
It is-
cyber school?
It is St. Philip.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Next year, that's going to change a little bit because I think, again, more people are filling out forms than they have been in previous years just due to the pandemic and everybody being free and reduced lunch.
Does that only follow the student, excuse me, follow the student through third grade?
Up
Since
to
you,
third grade. After third grade, then we wouldn't provide them any additional federal funding because we don't have a Title I program beyond third grade. It
okay.
has to match our title program. And the reason why we do K through 3 is that was decided a long time ago. We wanted to hit our earliest learners with the extra supports and funding, especially with reading and math at an earlier age. And because our funding is not really that high, dispersing it to like a middle school or a high school wouldn't get us quite as far as it does in our smaller elementary buildings. So that was our primary focus there. So what we do with our Title I funds, one, additional staff, you'll see that we'll go through for each of our buildings. So we have things like instructional aides as well as interventionists for students to help them. We have some programs for at-risk students like before school, after school tutoring. Sometimes we will supply extra resources or materials. We've done professional development specifically for students in the past. We do parent and family engagement, various nights or resources that can be sent home. And we also have activities and programs that are defined in the Title I school-wide plan that we're going to talk a little bit more about. So very quickly, I can speak to this one for you ladies. But in Conshohocken, the plan is that we have 2 additional instructional aides that we fully fund with title. So we provide their income as well as their benefits. And then in addition to the 2 aides, we also have parent and family engagement opportunities for families. And we also take that from feedback that we do with the Title I survey every year where they provide us with if they were happy with the resources that we provided, if there's something else that they would like to see. And then we provide their Title I summer program and then additional resources. In PE, instead of having 2 instructional aides, we have 1 full-time interventionist. That interventionist mostly works with them in game group settings throughout the day. And in addition to that, just like with CE, we have parent and family engagement opportunities, we have summer programs, and we have resources. Each school's summer programs and parent-family engagements look a little bit different because, as we said before, that parent and family engagement is key. We take feedback from the parents, and we try to make sure that it is specific to the needs of each of those individual buildings. We don't do just a blanket Title I building because that would defeat the purpose of why we do the parent and family engagement. So the feedback that the parents and families give is very important so that we can customize specifically to meet the needs of the individual building.
I have a quick question about the building. So does this mean that the other 2 schools, the other 2 K through 3 schools, don't qualify. So if someone qualifies based off of the free and reduced lunch that's at Ridge Park, for example, is that to say that they don't qualify, they don't receive these same services?
Well, first, the curriculum and the services that are provided in the district by the district itself are given to everybody. But as far as the Title I services are concerned, they get free and reduced lunch, but they don't have the additional resources in their building because there's not enough of a population within the building to generate those funds for that building.
And so how do we help those students?
Well, I think that we have other services in place because we do school improvement plans for each of our buildings where we do a needs assessment and we identify our strengths and our challenges in each of those buildings. And then we work specifically within those plans, looking closely at data to see how we can support them, whether it be through GAIN or other interventions that we have. And our other schools do a great job too, I think, of parent and family engagement. And they also have their own school improvement funds that they can use to support in any way that they need.
It's locally funded, so
Yeah.
we pride ourselves on making sure that we provide equitable resources among our schools, but we take advantage of the federal program money to provide additional resources. But if it works in any of our schools, then we fund it in all of them.
And we're just following the federal guidelines as to what schools are entitled to Title I money, not making up our own.
No.
Right.
So this isn't to say that there aren't students in those buildings that qualify, but just not a large enough population of them to warrant generating the funds in that direction.
Correct. In addition to some of the resources that we mentioned and the staffing, we also look to different types of professional development. And some of the ladies that are here this evening just attended, as Rosemary already mentioned, our annual Title I Improvement Conference in Pittsburgh, which in years past, actually recently, right before the pandemic, both schools were acknowledged as distinguished schools of excellence at that particular conference. We also have the PAFPC conference, that is the Pennsylvania Association for Federal Programs Coordinators Conference, that I have the pleasure of attending every year. And this year it will be Kalahari, and we will be going. I think Colleen is coming as well this year, and I think someone from the business office, and that goes through every year. It's a requirement so that we are in compliance, that we attend that particular conference. And another additional conference is specifically for parents. We actually pay for our SPAC Parent, which is a parent conference in Silver Springs, out in the western part of the state in the summertime, for parents so that they can understand Title I and what they can do to bring back for parents and teachers within their building to help support. And then the other thing that we do is we also do a preschool community outreach. So we have a day where we meet with all of the preschools in the area to let them know what kindergarten looks like here so that they can better support the students at their local buildings, prepare them for the standards that will be taught in kindergarten. So funding also goes to support that. All right, very quickly, I'm going to talk about school-wide plans because I want you to understand how the funding that we do then ties into a lot of the other things and the decisions that are made within each of the buildings. One of the requirements for ESSA is that all buildings that are receiving funding complete a school-wide plan. That school-wide plan is created based upon a needs assessment. So we're looking at Future Ready Index, we're looking at local assessments and data from the previous year of students, and looking at strengths and challenges. We're looking at equity considerations and identifying and, sorry, I already said that part. We're looking at, and we set performance goals. The performance goals go into our application every summer, and we set a specific benchmark for ourselves of what we want to achieve with specific standards, whether it's the ELA, math, climate, culture. And then the following year, we report to the state on those goals to see if we met them or not. And we have to do a whole entire summary of if we met it, why we were successful, and if we did not meet it, what are we going to do next year so that we can meet it. And then from there, we create an action plan that we have to follow throughout the year. So this school-wide plan is generated with teachers and with parents to make sure that everybody is on board and aware of what the changes are going to be and what their focus is going to be on. Those plans are submitted the 1st of September of every school year, and they have to be approved. And then school districts can go in throughout the year and make adjustments, revise as they need to. When you're monitored, and that's every so often, every 3 to 4 years, the state comes in and they monitor your plans to make sure that you're in compliance. This is one of the key things that the state comes in and reviews. So this is something that you always want to keep in the forefront because it is the ultimate goal. And if you don't keep track of your goals, the next year when you go to report out on them, then you're going to have issues with the state. So we're always making sure that we're kept in compliance with that. very quickly, as I said before, parent and family engagement is one of the main focuses of Title I because we know the support from home is going to be very helpful in making sure that the students are successful in school. So as I said before, each building does their own thing because it's specific to their own needs. So quickly, did you want to share out very quickly about what Conshohocken does and then Plymouth?
Hi, everyone. Good to see you this evening. For those of you who are listening in, I'm Denise Marks. I'm the principal at Conshohocken Elementary School. And I think going back, and you're looking at this list of what we do, it actually starts in the summer with planning with our SPAC parent and our PTO reps to take a look at the survey information that comes at the end of the year. Christine Donovan, who's here tonight, has been our Title I teacher liaison probably longer than I've been at Conshohocken. And we found that a lot of parents are not giving us a lot of feedback. So we are actually keeping track of parent participation in a different way this year so that we can look at the end of the year what our parent engagement actually was through all of the different events that we do. Because we know that we get well over 60, 70% of attendance and participation at events, but at the end of the year, when they complete the survey, it's not being reflective in that way. So this year we started with a playground meet and greet that was actually held this year at Sutcliffe Park because Conshohocken was still under construction at the time. And that was a great event where we had, I think, over 80% of our kindergarten families came out to that event, as well as first, second, and third grade families to meet the PTO, to meet staff, and to get to know one another. In the spring, we hold a Pride Night where students showcase their work with teachers. And we also have a food truck, which on the playground, a hot dog cart for families to enjoy dinner together, which Title I pays for. A big emphasis with our CE school-wide family engagement plan this year was increasing communication to get parents in the door more. So even though that costs nothing, teachers are every week sending emails to parents and families about what's happening, not just with the curriculum, but in special events that don't cost anything, but to give lots of reminders, things like our fall parade or our unity walk or Read Across America with mystery readers, or conferences, making sure that they come in the fall and meet with their child's teacher. So any event that is a connection where they can come in, it's not just that it's hit multiple times leading up to the event through the weekly communication has been much more robust this year with families. And then the kindergarten orientation in the spring, which we will have a take-home kit for all of our families on getting ready for kindergarten, which has been a great resource. So that's just a little snippet of Conshohocken.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Udovich. I'm the assistant principal at Plymouth Elementary. And I think it's important to say, too, like Maria said, we do many family engagement activities throughout the year, but these just happen to be some of the ones that are funded through our title funds. So the first one that Denise also had is our meet and greet, where we invite all of our families, our incoming kindergartners, and all students and their families to come to the playground at Plymouth. We had food trucks, water ice truck, and it was just a time for families to get together to meet each other, meet the teachers. A lot of the teachers come and the staff. This year was new. We did One Book, One Plymouth, and we picked a book for our entire school about Humphrey, who's a hamster, and it's his view of what school is. So families were invited to come and hear the first part of the book to really get the kids excited. And then everybody who attended received a book. And each week, Mrs. Ramsden, one of our reading specialists, does a little quiz she does a quiz question on the announcements. And the first class that calls up to the office, they get like a class little prize. But it's also important to note that even if you didn't come to the event, you still did get a book for your family. So that was great. And the kids love it. They're really running with it. So also we do kindergarten orientation. Like Denise said, we do give kits to our preschool students that are coming to kindergarten. And in those kits, it's a lot of letter practice and number practice. And the kindergarten teachers go through those kits with the students and the families and do a couple activities. And then finally, we always have Pride Day at the end of the year, which is an opportunity for families to come in and see some of the work that their students have done throughout the year. So that's it.
And I should mention that that kindergarten orientation, because we do that for students before they actually come to the Colonial School District, and we don't have a preschool program as a district, we're actually able to fund those kits for all 4 of our elementary schools for those students that are entering kindergarten. So Title I pays for all of the incoming kindergartner kits the year before they come. So that's like a nice thing that we're able to do to help prepare those kids before they come to Colonial. In addition to that, really briefly, I'm sorry to tell you, you just sat down, but our summer programs, or I can speak to it if you just would like me to, just to save the time, that's fine. The time frames of which they're running, they are both running July 10th to the 27th this year. We have Monday through Thursday for Conshohocken, and that's going to be a half-day program. Breakfast and lunch is being provided for everybody. Thank you to Lori McCoy. And students were invited based upon where they are performing with their local assessments. If they are below grade level in math or reading, we are communicating with home and encouraging them to attend. So all of that, actually, that information is being done now to prepare for the summer. And Plymouth is a similar program, similar dates. However, they are Tuesday through Thursday, and their program is full day based upon feedback from parents. And they also are having breakfast and lunch provided, and those students also that are performing below grade level are invited. And the reason that we have those students being invited, our funds this year were much less than they have been in years past. So the money that we have for summer programs is not quite as much as it has been, but we actually still feel like we're going to be able to give a really robust program. And we're really happy that we're basing it upon the feedback that we got from the parents, asking them what type of program they wanted, full day or half day and so forth. So we're hoping that we give families what they're looking for. So with that, now I have the most important part, our teachers here that just came back from Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to pull you ladies up. We're going to start first with Plymouth Elementary School. We have Liz Morris here. Liz, you can take it away.
All right. Can everyone hear me if I talk from here? All right, so thank you so much for inviting us. Like Maria said, I'm Liz Morris. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Plymouth Elementary School. And I thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share some highlights from the wonderful Improving School Performance Conference that we attended in the beginning of February. Although there were very many takeaways, wonderful takeaways from the conference, we're just going to share a few about some of the sessions that we attended. I am going to focus on, I'm going to go right to this one, the structured literacy sessions that I had attended. Structured literacy is an approach to reading instruction that consists of all the things listed up there on the slide in front of you. It's, of course, comprised of the 5 reading strands, which are phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. It should be multisensory approach. It should be explicitly taught, of course, with time for application of those skills that are explicitly taught. And it is focused all around the structure of language. The really positive takeaway is that here in Colonial, we do have programs and resources that we're currently using that do support structured literacy. For example, our K-2 classrooms all utilize Foundations, which is their word study curriculum, and it's a multisensory program that is explicitly taught, uses explicit instruction to teach those younger readers focus on the structure of language. And there's a lot of opportunity for application of those skills within that curriculum. So that was a really positive for us as teachers in the K-3 buildings. The next visual here that was brought up many times, some of you may have seen this before, Scarborough's reading rope. I think that this is a great visual that supports the science behind structured literacy. It reminds us that we really need to have equal implementation of language comprehension and word recognition to create our skilled readers, and continue to do that, start to do it at a very young age. If you see this is kind of a different view of Scarborough's reading rope. This was up in every session that I went to that had to do with structured literacy and the science of reading. It's just another way of looking at reading, which is a very simple view. It's using an equation And as we know with any multiplication equation, if one of the factors is 0, your product is going to be 0. So we need to have an equal amount of word recognition and the language comprehension to create successful readers, and structured literacy supports this simple view of reading. Furthermore, how does Hattie's research support structured literacy? So here in Colonial, we've had a lot of professional development surrounding Dr. Hattie and his research on visible learning, which really drives student success. So through his research, we've found that you can measure what makes students successful, which he applied a number of value to so we can determine what has the most positive impact or effect. He determined that the greatest indicators in a student's success is teachers' implementation of learning intentions and success criteria, which we call clarity. And in addition to clarity, most of the components of structured literacy that are viewed up here fall in the range that Hattie's research support have an excellent effect size. So if you see, the direct instruction of reading accuracy, word reading accuracy, has an excellent effect size for student success. Reviewing and warming up, having time to practice and apply those word reading skills, again, greater than the excellent effect size. And deliberate practice and building that automaticity in reading of those young readers, again, has an excellent effect size. So the takeaway was that structured literacy is a very important way to teach reading instruction. And they also gave some resources, like how are we going to then take this and apply it to our teaching, and what am I going to bring back to the teachers that I will work with in my building. They did put out a lot of resources for teachers that are on the Patton or SAS websites that actually offer free courses for educators that have to do with structured literacy and the science of reading. So I enrolled myself into those classes. They are, you do get Act 48 credits for those, and that's something that we can, encourage some teachers to do as they take this journey into structured literacy and the science of reading. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Moving. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and now Conshohocken also is going to come up and share what they took away from the conference.
Thank you. I actually have a couple of handouts, so if you... What's that? She's just going to pass them. Okay. So my name is Elise Nevins. I am the school counselor at Conshohocken Elementary, and I am going to talk about Ricky Robertson, who was one of the keynote speakers, and he also provided a session that I attended. And his focus was really a lot on the trauma piece, which I know has been a big focus for us as well. But he really talked more about not so much what trauma is, but what to do when you know that you have children who are experiencing these adverse childhood experiences. And basically, his point was, while ACEs can be lots of different things, we know every student had an adverse childhood experience through the pandemic. So what do we do now to help those students? So his focus was really on relationship-based approaches to teaching and learning. And one of the things that he talked about, and one of the handouts that I just passed out, was this approach to having strong relationships at school: talk, trust, feel, and repair. So that's the one that's the double-sided. And the talk is basically one of the most important gifts that a school member can give an ACES student is the opportunity to be heard and to listen without judgment, and then to build that trust. And when he talked about building trust, what he really meant was consistency, clear expectations for students, and helping them to understand that they know what to expect every day when they're walking through the door. Feel was all about embedding opportunities for students to manage their emotions throughout the day, things like mindful minutes, body breaks, deep breathing, yoga, calm down corners, journaling, different examples of ways for students to manage their emotions. And then repair, the focus was really on that restorative. So when something unexpected happens or when something goes wrong, focusing on the idea of you don't just have to say sorry and that's the end of it. Like, how do you actually restore what happened? How do you move forward and how do you do better next time? And then another piece that we really took away from it was this idea of building trauma-sensitive responses for behavior into our MTSS. We focus a lot on MTSS for academics, but we know there's a big behavioral component too. So different tiered supports that we can provide, like school-wide practices like the SEL that we are doing, basic things like classroom routines, morning meetings, collaboration with families. Tier 2 is a little bit more specialized, mentoring programs, community-based resources, small groups. And then Tier 3 is that single student intervention, the IEPs, individual therapeutic counseling, wraparound services. We have a lot of that in place already, but I think one of the things that we really took away from it was ways that we can bulk that up so that when we are experiencing difficulties with students, we have like a things that we can pull from to help them. So, and we also have this book, which was written by Ricky Robertson, which is amazing. And if anybody's interested in reading that, you can take a look. It's called Building Resilience in Students Impacted by Adverse Childhood Experiences. Anybody have any questions?
Hello, my name is Christine Donovan. I teach third grade at Conshohocken Elementary, and like Denise said, I am our Title I liaison, and I work with the parents and with the school to kind of bridge that gap. One of the sessions that we did get to go see was about the SAS portal, which has always been on the PDE website. They've just updated it and made it a lot more teacher-friendly. One major component that we felt was very beneficial was the new professional development section of SAS. There are a plethora of self-guided PD opportunities on there. The staff any staff actually can take any of the PD for free. You can actually receive Act 48 credit for all of those classes that you take. And most of the PD opportunities that you choose from, they're actually based on the Danielson framework. So you can pick and choose what you would like to use if you want something to benefit you. A couple of the PD offerings that they do have, some of the new ones they have: addressing implicit and explicit bias in the classroom, advanced strategies for flexible and responsive teaching, and then, of course, just like Liz said, the structured literacy. And they actually do have a 10-hour course on the structured literacy that they are putting out. One of the other updates that we have found to be extremely beneficial is their assessment builder. It is just an absolutely amazing tool. So at Conshohocken, we've actually introduced this to our staff, and we are going to be using school improvement time to build some of the resources. We are actually meeting tomorrow after school as a staff to go through the assessment builder. Each grade level will be able to have time to peruse everything and then create assessments based on their needs. The great part about this is that it's just a really efficient way for teachers to use release tasks with language from the PSSA and our PA standards. So we take that language and we're able to provide that to the children so that they understand, you know, what we're looking for. And the great part about it is that it's all in one place, and it's very teacher friendly, and it's been an amazing tool, and we're actually really excited to get to use it a little bit more. So.
Hi, good evening. I'm Amy Campbell. I teach third grade at Conshohocken. I'm also the K-3 language arts liaison for the district. And we're so thrilled, all of us, that we got the opportunity to go to this conference and just learn so much from vendors, from the sessions that we attended, and learning from each other while we were there too. So it's just a really exciting time. I'm going to talk to you about a session called Put Me in Coach, all about building collective efficacy and building a positive school climate, not only for students, but also for teachers. Also, to piggyback on Liz's discussion on John Hattie's research of what makes schools successful, and is just centered around the research of collective efficacy and how schools must create structures and cultures that foster effective educator collaboration. So collective efficacy of all the factors that go into students' lives is the number one influence on student achievement. So obviously very important and above all other factors. Students learn best from teachers that they like, and teachers who are passionate about helping students learn, teachers who monitor and adjust their approaches, who are clear and have clarity about what they intend students to learn, the teachers who forge strong relationships, adopt evidence-based teaching strategies, and seek to improve their own teaching styles. So we learned lots of strategies of how to build this collective efficacy within our buildings. So a couple things. Obviously, in Colonial, we have the best of the best teachers. So it's hard to be all of those things 100% of the time. So it's just thinking about strategies of how we can improve upon that. One was, what is your Everest? And working with either a leader or a coach to provide each teacher individual professional development on something that they're passionate about, obviously aligned to district goals, but having time to research something that they're passionate about and spending time on that like throughout a school year to implement. And the other thing was positive staff incentives. It seems a little bit silly, but we've tried it at Conshohocken and it's still a lot of fun. Just out of the box ways to keep staff motivated. Just like our students, we really like rewards and competitive things and incentives. So just as much as the students. So on Valentine's Day, we just 2 minutes before the kids got there, we had a little scavenger hunt and teachers were running through the building looking for foam hearts for parking passes. It sounds silly, but it really started the day off nicely. And that's not the only thing. There's lots of things up our sleeves, but just things to keep that motivation and positive school culture for adults as well as students. So.
Parking passes are certainly worth the scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
Having gotten a ticket a few times, I'm participating in the next.
Thank you, ladies.
Wait a minute, you don't write yourself a pass?
I do not. Can I do that? I could try. Maybe I'll get 2 tickets.
Thank you, ladies. And you know, best practices fair proposal just went out today. So maybe some of you might to consider creating a session for the rest of our staff. Bring back some of the things that you brought back. Sounds like you had a good time. Okay, that concludes our Title I presentation for right now. Is there any questions specifically that you have for me that you would like me to address?
You actually just began to mention when you talk about proposals for best practices. My question was about how do we roll all of this wonderful information out to the rest of the staff? Like, what is the plan to share and to expand upon this so that all of our teachers have access to this knowledge?
So as you heard, they are sharing already at their building levels, right? So that's only helping those 2 individual buildings. But hopefully with best practices fair next year, we are currently in the process of preparing for that. So an email was sent out this morning actually to the full entire staff. And so we're hoping that we can generate our own professional development sessions in our November PD day next year. However, if something comes out of this throughout the rest of the school year, we actually might be able to create something for the K-5 level per se for our August PD. So we're always taking that into consideration.
And if I could also just add in our professional learning times, our days, Amy mentioned she's a liaison across ELA, so our committee meetings there, as well as the reading specialist meetings that they share. It is Title I funds that are paying for our Title I staff to go, but we do share it out across all of our buildings, best practices. Any other questions about Title? Thank you, everyone, for participating in this evening's CCOB.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item we have up is our virtual programming update. Mr. Merck?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we started off this endeavor, we developed a goal with the high school folks because it's primarily where we're focusing this on at the moment. And our goal was to try to incorporate our vision. So our goal for a virtual program is we want to provide students additional personalization and flexibility, creating resilient, lifelong learners and leaders who will enrich the world. So we're going to use that as our driving force when we developed our programming. Next slide, please. So some of the things we consider that we have to look at when we're developing a virtual program is we have to make sure we still adhere to the PA core standards. That's number one. Then it's, okay, how do we take our curriculum and transform it in a way that it's going to serve the students well enough within a virtual program? And then we have to look at customization. How do we craft the courses in a way that will maximize what we're trying to achieve? Look at our LMS integration. How do all the programs we might use in a virtual program, how will they come together as one? Obviously, expenses. We have to make sure we consider how, how is it that we're going to build everything and get it up and running. The appearance and layout, we're always looking for consistency in appearance and layout in any type of virtual platform that we use. So this will help drive that force, not just in our virtual program, but within all of our LMS systems. Professional development, we have to look at, okay, we'll have professional development for the virtual program, and how is that going to, how will that kind of mix with the professional development that we have for the entire district? Our student information system integration, again, that goes back to, will all the platforms that we want to utilize, how will they work together? Accessibility, making sure that what we create for the virtual program is something that we're offering to all of our students. And then lastly, scheduling. What's being involved in a virtual program entail for our students when it comes to their daily schedule. So our progress so far, you can see we started this conversation last year. The PW leadership team and our curriculum team had discussions about, what is it we want to look at? What are some samples out there? We met with a consultant who already has established a virtual program in another district, and they kind of gave us ideas, got us brainstorming on what we could do for our students here. And then we evaluate what our current third-party offerings are, and how is it those programs that have been successful up to this point, how will they fit into what we want to customize? So far this school year, we're trying to establish our standards in our standards of practice. What are our must-haves and what are our nice-to-haves? We're going to provide training for the course developers. We're going to try to focus on 3 courses for the virtual offerings to kind of set the stage. And then we're going to communicate with the stakeholders about what the courses are and what kind of learning will take place and what kind of model. Going into next school year, we're going to find those opportunities to offer our initial virtual courses. We're going to survey the stakeholders, specifically the students. What kind of things would they look for in a virtual program? Continue to develop our courses and expand our catalog with virtual options. And then as we move into the 24-25 school year, we're going to look at evaluating what we've created this year and going into next year, and then continue to expand our course catalog. What you'll see here when we talk about establishing standards, we're going to utilize a course evaluation checklist that kind of tells us, okay, what's essential, what's best practice, and what's exemplary. And we're going to use this checklist to set those guidelines for how our courses should be structured. And what's nice is we can do that in conjunction with our current Canvas courses and Google Classroom courses that we've created. This way we can kind of have teachers revisit, what should our courses look like back when we first established or started integrating one LMS throughout the entire district a couple of years back. So this will kind of be our blueprint right here to help establish that. And last but not least, the 3, oops.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
The 3 areas we're going to look at initially that we have been looking at are our career and financial management. We're going to establish a course in our health and physical education department. And then we're going to look at a course that's as an ELA elective. So we'll establish what our virtual program will look like using these 3 areas.
Quick question. So the students just went through the process of choosing their classes right last week, I believe. Was this included?
No, these were not included, but we're going to find opportunities for where these could be offered to students that need flexibility in their schedule.
We still need to meet with CEA and have a conversation from a collective bargaining standpoint on how this can be implemented. Once we have that memorandum of understanding in place, we can turn around and start offering courses. This achieves a couple different goals. Well, it starts to achieve. I'm not sure you're ever absolutely there. One, we have about 100 kids. We talked about the last board meeting who are in cyber charter school since the pandemic, and we'd like to bring those students back. Two, we do have students who learn differently and would take advantage of potentially taking a course online, or additionally, maybe they would like to add a credit and get phys ed, take that online, or take health online, or an ELA elective online, and then that frees them up for another math or science. And then lastly, there's dialogue's been rather heavy in the various counties around Philadelphia as far as starting school later for our high school students. And there are certainly significant barriers to that related to transportation, amongst other things. But starting to offer courses potentially, at least partially, some of our courses as an online course would give those students an opportunity to then come in after first period and access those courses at different times. So we're trying to use a multi-pronged approach. And lastly, we want to compete with not only the best schools in the area that are in person, but also the programs that have strong cyber components too.
In terms of which 3 initial course offerings, you explained the health and phys ed, and I know for years kids have wanted to take that in the summer or some other time so they can double up on AP and honors courses. How did you pick the other 2?
We worked with staff who was interested just to sort of get it going and build momentum. We're also looking at courses that have a higher subscription rate. So obviously health and PE and ELA do. We have good subscription in career and financial management, but it's not certainly not throughout the whole school. The next types of courses we would pick would be a history course, a science course, to make sure that we have something offered at each grade level in the core disciplines.
Okay, thank you.
So, what are the intentions, I guess, on how to utilize having some courses online? Would it be to have them taught outside of the school day, or like in the summer? Are we utilizing like the questions that are kind of in the practical part of it from a teaching perspective and from student perspective? Like what are you looking at trying to do?
I'll let I can tell you my experience, and I can, Rosemary and Ed and Joe have done and Maria have done a lot of work with Jason and the high school staff. It's a combination of synchronous and asynchronous work. Depends upon what you're using the course for, Chris. So if I'm using it, maybe because I'd like a later school start time, I'm probably going to access that through Canvas after school hours or in the evening versus during that first period, because the purpose would be not to be in school that first period, right? Get more rest. If I'm using it as credit recovery, or I'm using it as to take another course, so I open up my schedule for another credit, there could be a variety of times to access it. But the intent would be a combination of asynchronous and synchronous. And really, if you remember 2-3 years ago, we had our high school staff all using different learning management systems. We are now all one with Canvas. And so, we piloted a couple different versions. Not everybody agreed, but the majority went with Canvas. And so now, as a parent, as a student, it's one area to go to access all of my content. There are several teachers who are already doing great things like flipped classroom. The students watch their lectures in the evening, and then they come into school and get right to work on their labs. It's one of the most effective things, not the only one, but I think it's one of the most effective ways to use some of our the LMS tools that we have.
So then, just so I can see it, like I'm a visual kind of person. So the classes that you're starting with would be classes that it's not a live teacher interaction. They're going on and they're seeing maybe a recorded lecture
Sure.
or thing. Okay, so
But
that's,
there would be office hours, and the idea would be, like, let's say I'm an English teacher teaching a 10th and 11th grade, 12th grade elective, whatever the course might be. I'd have office hours. They would probably see me as, they would see a recorded portion for the asynchronous work. But that would be one of my classes. So if I teach 5 classes, that would be that period. That's when I'm working on that. It's just that my students are learning remotely. From a teacher perspective, it's part of my schedule.
So as a follow-up, so actually 2 questions on that. So this would kind of replace some of the independent studies that students currently take, or
It could.
at what point in time taken?
Very
I
well
remember
could.
my daughter was here, she did like an independent
Yeah.
study for a class because she couldn't fit into her schedule, but it was a prerequisite for an AP course she needed, so she kind of did it. So this would be offered at scale when we get to the full offering potentially.
They would run concurrently until we get it going.
So my follow-up question to that is what you just mentioned about if a teacher is teaching one of these virtual courses, it would be part of their teaching course load. What would be the impact on that, if there would be any, on how many teachers we would need to hire, or part of the collective bargaining agreement for extra duties, and how would that look like from a financial standpoint, or we start to look at those numbers?
Great question. So the goal to initiate this, and I know of a district that did this about 5 years ago, and the goal was to actually reduce some teaching staff in certain disciplines and offer. They were using a third party to offer certain disciplines, so kids could sort of just bypass some of the curriculum. That's not our intent. Our intent is to have our staff teach our curriculum and treat it as if the course is, whether the course is in person or online, it's one of my courses. So it should have a neutral impact on staffing. The challenge will be, let's say a course only gets 11 students registered for it. That impacts other class sizes, right? So if I teach 5 classes of 10th grade English and one of them's 11, the others are going to be 26, 27. So there's the balancing act that we have to be careful of. We need to make sure we have equitable class sizes, but it's not used to increase in the amount of staff we have, and it's not used to decrease. It's to keep it neutral.
So I had a question that dovetails into what you were saying about the participation, essentially. Is there built in with what you're planning to have like a rolling, I don't know if it's annual, 5 years or whatever, as you roll out more courses to kind of reevaluate your catalog to say, we need to get rid of this one and add this one or what have you?
Certainly. We have a curriculum cycle that we follow. So any of the courses that would be successful or ones that are struggling to get subscription would go through that same evaluation process where they research what the interest is in the course, they write the curriculum, and then they evaluate. And the best part is the kids speak with their feet, right? They let us know the courses they like. They let us know the courses they don't. And our high school staff is very attuned to that, and our curriculum supervisors certainly work very closely with the department chairs and the high school administration. One of the biggest challenges we have is the depth. It's a great thing, but it's a challenge, is the depth and scope of our high school curriculum. 28 APs, International Baccalaureate, potentially online courses. Kids can go in a variety of directions and focus on areas, and that's what we should provide. But then we have to have, as a board, you have to be willing to have those hard conversations. What if we have a class that only has 11 students in it? What if we have a class that has that great number of 29, right? Is that 2 sections or is that 1 section? And that can relate to staffing decisions. So high school is going through that right now. As was previously mentioned, we'll be meeting with Mr. Price and Dr. Bacani probably at the end of this month to review what the initial subscription numbers look like. And then we start putting together the jigsaw puzzle that is the master schedule.
What is your ultimate time frame for full scale? I know you said in 24, 25 you want to continue to evaluate and expand, but if you were to, have you made projections as to when you think you'll be at full scale for this, for offering?
Great question. I would love to be able to offer our entire program of studies in 5 years as just running parallel to our curriculum. I think that's where all schools need to be in the next 5 to 10 years, because you look at all the personalized learning, not just as a result of the pandemic, just as a result of what's going on in education. Everything is becoming personalized, 24/7, access it whenever you want. I think it's where we need to be. I don't think we're going to lose a lot of students if we don't do it, but I think it's where we need to be competitive with other schools. I think the key area right now is to get our high school staff comfortable with it, work with CEA on an agreement so everybody understands what the purpose of it is. We're not looking to decrease staff or anything like that. We want our teachers teaching our curriculum. It's just we're going to change the medium a little bit, change the mode. Get it going. Once it's successful, start adding those core classes, and then eventually go for the whole program of studies.
Could this potentially help with the conflict that some students have with wanting to take tech school programs, and then they have certain courses they really want to get through it in PW that aren't offered at the times that make it convenient for them to follow a tech school course as well?
Very possible. I'm sure there are multiple unintended opportunities that will blossom out of this, and students will find creative ways to work with their schedules, and we appreciate that. And so we'll know a lot more as students. One of the great things about the high school is kids want to be there every day, right? There might be resistance to this initially because kids would rather be in school. They want to be with their peers. They want to be. What's not to like? I mean, it's a great place to be. So, but there are students who maybe learn a different way and would take advantage of this, and still can be part of the fabric of the school, but take advantage of a virtual course. I mean, look at how many times are you just on your drive home or watching the news. How many commercials are you hearing for universities that are offering their entire program online? Even Penn State has one of the best speech programs in the country, and now that's offered. And you would think that's a course that needs to be in person. You're teaching speech and getting an advanced degree in it, but now that's offered entirely online. So, we need to move in that direction.
What's your anticipation for kind of the subscription? Do you think it's going to be the online courses have a ton of power users, which are the ones that would be in the charter school? Or do you think it's going to be like 75% of the students take at least one online class? Maybe this semester I've got 3 regular and 1 online, or what's kind of your vision for how that would break out?
Originally, it'll be the latter rather than the former. I think we'll see a definite interest in health and PE. I think career and financial management too. But I think it'll be more sort of piecemeal to start, and then if the course is going well, it'll get additional courses are added. It'll gain strength.
This is personally very exciting because I remember, like I said, when my daughter did independent study for a computer science class that she needed as a prerequisite. As you're scaling up, what is your expectation or plan for how you're going to support students with special needs who want to access this, and how do we make sure, and maybe not an answer, but just a thought around how do we make sure that these programs are available for our students with special needs, our L student population as well, are able to access and have this opportunity?
We certainly can do that through the IEP process. It would be no different than a class. So we certainly can do that.
Even when you take a virtual class, there needs to be moments where you are making the in-person contact. There has to be those checkpoints so that you don't have, while there are students, and I've taught several of them, who could just do well on an assessment in the 11th hour and save the day, you don't want to take that chance or risk. So there still has to be that in-person contact, especially if the student has a disability.
I think this is super exciting. Are any other high schools or districts in the area, have they started this or rolled it out yet?
It's varied throughout the district. Downingtown has something called the IB Academy, so you can access any course online virtually. almost any course that is also offered in their high school. There are other schools that don't have anything. And it's met with, it's really determined by how much interest there is from the students. And so we have to make sure, and I should have let Rosemary talk about this because she's done the lion's share of the work with her team. You have to make sure your staff is comfortable. That's the first thing. And we have to go low and slow and build this over time. Otherwise, it'll fail. Mr. Slagle retired, but I talked to him about it as the president of CEA, so that we can talk about it. I'll certainly talk about it with Mrs. Forrester and her team, and Dr. Bacani and his team have to be part of it. So it needs to build over time, but we have the technology in the district, we have the infrastructure, we have the teaching talent. It's there. It's all there. We just need to develop it and grow it.
That's great. Thank you for being proactive and really looking into this.
Rosemary, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered everything. Ed Merck has really been at the forefront with this, with the consultant from the other districts. So we appreciate his work and those that are working on it in the high school. And again, like Dr. Christian said, low and slow is the name of the game because we do want everyone to feel comfortable, and everybody has a lot of questions, as evidenced tonight here too. So they're all great questions, and we'll continue to pursue them. Yeah? All right, so the last thing we have on the agenda, we do have 2 conference requests that we are asking for your approval. The first one is Beth Lynch, our college counselor at PW, and she is looking to go to Sarasota Springs next month for the Such Counselor Tour. And this tour is for counselors to go through Skidmore College, Union College, Colgate, and Hamilton. You see the dates there and the expense there, so it's a 3-day program for high school counselors. And the second conference request we're asking you to look through is Beth Rickard, who is also from PW. She is one of our EDI teachers. This is a Gen Cyber program at University of Pittsburgh. You are aware that we have a dual enrollment program with Pitt. This will take place in the summer, and we're looking to expand our programming to include some cybersecurity work. So this would be an excellent resource to do that. So that is the second conference request that you will be asked to approve on Thursday. Any questions about anything else? All right. Back to you, whoever. Ms. Clay.
Are there any public comments at this time? No? All right, so this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, welcome to the Community Relations and Student Life Safety and Wellness Committee meeting for Monday, March 13th. Do we have any public comment on the agenda? Okay, seeing none at this time, then I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mrs. Burke.
Good evening, everybody. There are 4 items on tonight's agenda. The first one is the Chapter 339 Plan Overview, which will be presented by our illustrious guidance liaisons, Sue Mason, elementary liaison, and Lisa Genovese, our secondary liaison. Next on the agenda, we have behavioral health grants, current and anticipated, which will be presented by our behavioral health advisor, Dr. Felix Scherzinger. Third is a discussion regarding calming spaces. And last but not least is a policy review. We're going to delete a couple policies that are redundant and do a first read on our homelessness policy. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our guidance liaisons to talk about Chapter 339 plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Burke. I'm Susan Mason, Ridge Park counselor, and this is Lisa Genovese, one of the PW school counselors. So thank you for having us tonight. We wanted to share with you a little bit of our 339 plan. So a little background. In 2017 and 18, it was our turn to participate in state training. We were guided by Denise Marks and Steve Price. They were really instrumental in helping us get this accomplished because it was a big task. But the state requires that all of the school districts in the state of Pennsylvania have a comprehensive guidance plan. And we wanted to put everything together, and the focus is actually on career readiness. So taking a look at some of our slides, most of you are familiar with the PA Future Ready Index. So we're looking at taking the system of measures that we have in our school performance indexes and move beyond the point-in-time achievement, and we value our effort to help all of our students learn, grow, and succeed in the classroom and beyond. So we're looking globally at our students. We're certainly taking a look at day-to-day data, but we're also going beyond that, kind of looking outward. So there are three components: the state assessment measures, which you're familiar with, PSSA, Keystones, and numbers of others; on-track measures, closing the achievement gap, attendance, English language proficiency. And then where 339 really bumps in is the college and career readiness measures, where our career standards benchmarks, career pathways, college and post-secondary transition, and graduation rate. So what is Chapter 339? Again, I said the state of Pennsylvania requires all school districts to develop a comprehensive K-12 school counseling plan aligned to career education work standards. So what the state intention was to take what we do as school counselors and blend that all in with what happens in curriculum and supporting our students as they go through K-12, making sure they have a clear pathway to define, what their outcome is when they leave us. So the comprehensive plan outlines the importance of career planning and future readiness for all students starting in the elementary grades, focusing on career awareness and preparation, getting a job, career acquisition, career retention and advancement, keeping a job, and entrepreneurship, creating a job. And you may wonder at the elementary level what we focus on, but we are focusing on some of the soft skills. As we attended the trainings, the research was shown to us that employers are very happy with the workers that they have coming to them and their ability to learn the task, to perform the job, to take the directions and follow them. However, some of the soft skills were where they were lacking: cooperation, problem solving, listening to each other, even coming to work on time and valuing that work ethic. So at the elementary school level, we focus a lot on those soft skills: respecting each other, learning together, cooperation. And that's encompassed through all of our activities, not just guidance, but particularly in some of our curricular areas where students work together, problem solving in STEAM, learning to cooperate and collaborate in games and math. So there are a lot of opportunities. So the program goals for 339 plan are clearly measurable and directly tied to the district mission statement. And for school counselors, you may or may not be aware, but we operate under a set of standards as well. Our standards are set by the American School Counselor Association. They are also in line. Mrs. Donovan earlier spoke about the SAS system, Standards Alliance system. If you go into that, you can see our school counseling standard as well, and they cover the domains of academic, personal, social, and career. So we are looking at those as we built our 339 plan. So to give you an example, or to a clear picture, I put up our Colonial School District mission statement next to our counseling department statement. And you can see that it parallels in many different ways. The Colonial School District mission specifically spells out all of our stakeholders: our students, our teachers and staff, our administration, our family members and caregivers, and our school board, who represent the community and support us. In our mission statement for the counseling department, we have core tenets as well. We believe that students are capable learners and can achieve success, have the right to be respected and treated with equity and dignity, can develop skills and behaviors leading to a lifelong quest for learning, can achieve their own individual potential with support and guidance, and should feel safe, encouraged, and supported in the school environment. And as you look at those two statements next to each other, you can see how we support each other in supporting our students.
Hi, everyone. I have to say that, I've been in this district a really long time, 33 years. And the one thing that I've always felt that we didn't do as good a job as we did on other aspects was the career piece of it. And when 339 came about in 2017, I was really excited because I felt like we were now going to put an emphasis on the career piece. We did a great job, I think, with college and getting kids set for that, and and emotional counseling and those pieces. But I felt like the career stuff we didn't really, we didn't do as good a job as I felt like we could. So I got really excited about this. And I'm 4 years later or 5 years later, really excited about where we are with it and the things that we've accomplished. So the way that it worked, there were a team of us, K to 12 counselors. As Susan said, we had 2 really great administrators that helped us with Denise and Steve. We had an advisory committee that I'll talk more about later that had some local educators from the college standpoint, workforce development. And the idea was that this is not a guidance counselor responsibility, that it went beyond us, that it really had to be K to 12 implemented into the curriculum, and that it was everybody's responsibility to help our students think about careers and get them career ready. So in 2017 to 19, the process was a lot of professional development, as Susan said. We went to several very long meetings where the state kind of told us what they wanted in the plan, what it had to look like. We had to do some refining of our K-12 curriculum, looking at the career standards and how they fit into things we're already doing, what we need to add. We had an action plan, which included an advisory committee, career resources and activities, and then we implemented the plan. And now, many years later, we have to resubmit the plan. We had to review it, update it, look at what we said we were going to do, what did we do, what do we want to change. So we've gone through that process this year with counselors and some administrators. I knew I was going to do it wrong. Okay, so the 339 plan has some indicators that are there to help students not only learn about careers, but choose careers that meet their interests and their aptitudes, their abilities, and that they have goals to achieve that career. The 339 plan outlines all the steps that we carry out. Each level, elementary, middle, and high school, has kind of a different focus. In the elementary level, they're really identifying interests and, like Susan said, developing those soft skills that we continue to work on through the high school. There's no doubt about that. Those soft skills really do have to be honed in and developed because they're really important, and we have kids that still need to work on those. But at the middle school level, they're exploring their interests, and at the high school, the goal is really to come up with a plan, at least a starting point, like we tell kids. And then you can see different pieces of evidence at different grade levels are listed there, from demonstration and career exploration and preparation activities, individualized career plans, and then development of a career portfolio. Susan's going to talk about elementary.
So one of the charges of this exercise was to come up with big ideas as far as career focus. And as Lisa said, this was a big, daunting task. It took all year to finish this. But what I find interesting about something like this is to give you a chance to take a look at your program, to take a look at what you're doing that you might not have recognized as something really good, and to kind of bring it all together in one document. So our big ideas in elementary are that our students will identify, recognize, and embrace individual students' interests, passions, and abilities with comprehensive career development interventions and resources. So the smaller goals underneath, you would see that students by grade 5 will take a career interest inventory and explore how it connects to 2 subject areas they like. And a little later on in our presentation, we'll talk about how that happens. And students by grade 5 will learn about our Colonial Technical School, and and the different programs they offer. At the middle school, the big idea was that by the end of 8th grade, all middle school students will demonstrate awareness of career clusters, pathways that align with their interests and strengths. And as we all know, that by the time you get closest to high school, you really kind of have to have some idea of where you're headed. So with the help of the support of all our staff, our guidance department, and our administration, hopefully our students will have a good idea of the career path they choose, at least their interests and abilities. So 6th grade students will complete career assessments that identify individual areas of strength and utilize results to identify 2 career pathways. 7th grade students will complete a career assessment based on John Holland's theory of vocational choice, and many of you may have taken that yourselves. Upon completion, students will identify their most prominent Holland personality type and the best fit work environment for them. It's really important to identify for students, do you like to work with others? Do you prefer to work alone, indoor, outdoor? Research. in the front lines. So there are a lot of things that you take into consideration. By the end of 7th grade, students will be aware of programs and career pathways available at our tech school. By the end of 8th grade, students will have explored 3 specific careers that align with their interests and aptitude. It's not just important to identify what your areas of interest and skills are, but you also have to kind of dabble in that a little bit to see if this is really where I want to go. In preparation for 9th grade course selection, 8th grade students will identify available PW high school courses that can prepare them for careers in their career pathway of choice.
So at the high school, our big idea was that all students would be able to identify and describe a career that aligns with their interests, abilities, aptitudes, and values, and being sure to look at job outlook and financial considerations relative to that career. So one of the things we really stress with students is what kind of training do you need for the job that you think you want? And what is your, what am I thinking, like profit to loss, Is your education going to cost this much and your salary is going to be this much, and you want to reconsider it. And with college being the cost that it is, it's a really important conversation that we need to have with kids that we didn't have years ago. But it's a really important one now. We want to make sure that that it's the right choice for them. So what will students do to do those things? They'll participate in career readiness experiences such as career fair, job speakers. The main thing is that they take the career and financial management class, and we do encourage all students to take that class. It's not a graduation requirement, but as we tell them, the things we do in that class are a graduation requirement. So if they don't do it, if they don't take the class, then we have to work with them individually to do it. And that's where that online class would certainly be a great help, for sure. And we have some things, we encourage job shadows, internships. We have an awful lot of students taking internships so that they can get hands-on experience to see if what they think they like is really what they think it is, because oftentimes we know that it's not. I'm a prime example of changing my major my junior year, second semester, when I actually did what I thought I wanted to do my whole life and realized it's not what I wanted. And then it was like, oh boy, now what? So we want kids to experience that in high school. And the elective classes are also ways for them to explore that. And, when I don't want anyone to think that we want kids pigeonholed into a career. We don't. We know that kids are going to change their mind and grow and develop. But we want them to have a starting point, I guess, when they get into high school, if they have some idea of what they like or 10 ideas of what they like. If we have courses or clubs or experiences that can give them some of that experiential information to help them make a decision, that's really what we want to do. And then once they do those things, then they complete a comprehensive portfolio in Naviance, which kind of showcases the career inventories, interest surveys, and the assessments that they've done. And so talking about Naviance. Naviance, I think many of you are familiar with, but it's a comprehensive college and career readiness solution or platform that we use all the way from K to 8 or K to 12 in various different ways. At the elementary, it's really used as a housing platform for the career development things that they do. At the middle school, they use Naviance for career exploration as well as housing all the pieces of evidence. So the state says that we have to show a specific number of pieces of evidence of the career education that we've delivered over the years. And then the high school, we use career assessments in Naviance, and they use it also in the career financial management class. And then we house all those pieces of evidence here in Naviance, so we develop a portfolio. So in the career financial management class, these are the high school pieces of evidence that the students do. You can see that they do some inventories, some assessments, and then they do some specific assignments in the class that they also upload into Naviance, as well as doing a cover letter. They write a resume. They do a retirement plan. They do some really neat things. Does anyone have any questions about any of these, like what they are? 'Cause, like, some of them are.
Where do we teach kids how to balance a checkbook?
I think they do that in this class, but it's not one of the pieces of evidence. It's not. Oh, then I don't have the answer to that.
What are the tasks that says traits of a millionaire?
So I emailed our teacher before I came here to find out what that and Dream Board. I thought those were two you might ask me about. The traits of a millionaire are that they watch a video about different millionaires, and they're supposed to record what they think those people, what kind of traits those people had that made them so successful. And then they have to evaluate themselves to see if they have those traits. If they don't, what do they think they need to do to try to, build those kind of qualities in themselves so that they could be successful financially. So it's a pretty, I think, introspective kind of assignment.
Are these tasks the required tasks, or these tasks that ones that students can choose?
No, these are all the required. These are the pieces of evidence that we've identified at the high school level as being what we're going to prove to the state that through our 339 plan that students have done.
If a parent didn't agree with one of these tasks, specifically the idea of traits of a millionaire,
Okay.
I think can be very values-based as to how a family thinks about what success is. And not just looking at it from the traits of a millionaire and success being that they are financially have reached this particular level or milestone. And that might think that, some families may have different belief systems around the distribution of wealth.
Sure.
As far and compared to the accumulation of wealth by individuals. And so just thinking about if a parent or a family's values don't lie in the acquisition of monetary wealth,
And,
are there different tasks that they
Yeah,
can
and I want to say that I could very well not be describing exactly what that assignment is perfectly. The first thing I would tell you to do is to reach out to the teacher to actually see what the assignment is. I mean, she quickly texted me, and I'm trying to remember what I read 2 hours ago.
We can
So-
also, that's a living, breathing document,
Yeah,
the
for
339,
sure.
and it clearly can be modified.
Sure.
So if there is an issue with a particular section of it or task or assignment within it, it can be, certainly, you make a very good point, Tamina.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that they're using it as this is success. I don't know that that's how they're framing it, for sure. You're welcome.
And ultimately, and I think you did a great job explaining it because, and I went through it, my goal was to be a journalist. I'm a big bad superintendent and watching the weather all the time. I think finding out what you don't like can be as valuable as finding out what you do.
For sure.
Especially before your parents or guardians start paying for 2 or 4 year university, as we all have been there. Many of us have been there. So, getting our students to start thinking about it in middle school and then high school is exceedingly valuable. And with the understanding that it'll probably change.
Sure.
But that's okay.
The average student changes their major 4 to 6 times in college.
Sure.
We just want, we want to do our best to help our students not be that person because it can cost a lot of money to do that.
And I think my other thought about that, just listening to Dr. Christian, is that when we start thinking about career exploration and career decisions, not every career is going to lead you to being a millionaire.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm an educator, so I know this from real life. So I just, don't want to over, and I don't think that anything that we're doing intentionally as a district does this, but even when the state says and offers these tasks, that we're not unintentionally indicating that, this is the goal because, social workers are necessary, teachers are necessary, and those are not millionaire careers, but they offer wealth in other ways.
Sure. And I think part of that is just helping students understand to be financially sound and to understand financial literacy. I mean, that's really the goal of it is, so many of our parents didn't teach us about that and, credit card debt and education debt, student loans. I think so. It's more of a understanding everything so you have a plan and just being aware because so many of us are not or we're not. Sure.
Lisa, then I won't hold you responsible for my journalist.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Sue.
I have a question in regards to what you just said about financial literacy. And you may not have the details of what's involved in that, but is that from a banking perspective? So I think Chris and I we have graduates who did not learn, and when I tell them we're going to sit down and write, and I'm like, you didn't learn that in the career and management class? And they're like, no. And so just as simple as a savings, a checkings account, is it go to that level?
So, and one of the reasons that we as counselors really push this class, even though it's not technically a graduation requirement, we want all kids to take it. We're talking about the career piece of it. that's only about a third of the class. 2/3 of the class is the financial aspect of it. And I'm not 100% sure about all the different things they do there, but the majority of the class is focused on financial literacy and helping them understand the reason to invest. I mean, investing and how your money can grow when you do that. I know that's part of it. I think they do look at budgeting. One of the assignments they do in the class, like this, create a budget. That, from what I understand about that assignment, they choose a career. They have to find the job, go online, see how much it makes. Then you have to buy a house and buy or rent or buy a house, a car, and all the things you would want, and see if you can actually afford that on that. So I think those pieces are covered. I don't know all the specifics. I'm sorry.
Just a note on that budget exercise. Most of my kids come home after that assignment or during that assignment with like lots of aha moments and like, I'm never leaving home. Thanks. I just want to say, I have to have 16 roommates in order to survive.
That's really the purpose of all this, is just to make them more aware of real life stuff.
Is this the same course that does like the professional soft skills, like the how to respond to an email and everything like that, or is that a different business?
Well, I know
course?
that the IB program, the PPS class, I know they really focus on that kind of stuff. But I would think if anybody does, it would be this class. But I don't know this. Then it's probably this, I would think. Okay. So Naviance, part of those of you that are parents here, the piece of Naviance that you're probably more familiar with if you've had students go to college is the college piece of Naviance. So these are 4 different screenshots of different parts of Naviance on the college sense of it. If students have an idea of colleges they want to go to, they can compare themselves by their GPA and their GPA and their SAT scores to what the average is for those colleges, and they can get a sense of if that's a good fit for them. This one in the top right is the scattergrams. That's always a favorite for students and parents because they can see other students in the last 5 years and what schools they've gotten into based on their GPA and class rank. And then there's scholarship information in here as well. So Naviance is a pretty robust platform, and we use it a lot at the high school. And we have another platform that we're starting to use that Susan's going to try to explain.
So our third graders have been using Virtual Job Shadow, which offers them a chance to kind of play with careers, look at things based on their level. So they're third graders. And they take a little inventory, they find out some things about the job, and I want to say you raised some good points because I don't work at the middle school or the high school, but I know that we are all trying to not only impart financial sense to our students, but also values. There are a lot of careers out there that do not pay a lot of money. There are a lot of careers out there that are very important. There are a lot of careers that pay a lot of money that some students want to aspire to, but then when they find out all of the different ramifications, it's not what they thought it was going to be. There's a lot to be said for the balance of a good life and a good paycheck. So, and we all know that as we struggle. So with our Pathful Junior, we have not been able to take a look at that yet, but it's going to be a smooth transition because I think pretty much it's just a name change, a vendor change. And our third grade teachers really enjoy using this. So when Lisa was speaking to the high school artifacts, part of the 339 plan was to intentionally focus on career pieces that students could add to their portfolio. And one of the most important things to remember is that parents, you as parents and all of our students' parents, have access to this now that we are moving from our yellow career folders that we had in K to 5, where we put the actual artifact. We are hoping to move into an electronic portal on Naviance. So that as students age up, all of their career portfolio pieces will be there. So that you as a parent can go back and look as they are a junior, a sophomore, and see what did they have in middle school? What was there from the 4-5? How have my students' interests changed? Have they changed? Are they still, some kids, know from the beginning what they want to do. But Pathful provides an opportunity to kind of look at live career. They have speakers on there that they can attend to. We do have speakers that come into the building, but it opens the door to all kids having that opportunity to kind of look and just kind of explore. And that's what we're looking for. The 6th to 8th grade path full becomes more intentional. I know that the counselors there can push out assignments to students. They can complete the assignments on their own. Of course, at the elementary school, they're more teacher directed. And then at the high school, you guys have an opportunity to.
Yeah, they can do virtual job shadows. So if there's a career that they want to see what it's like, they can do a virtual shadow. We can also we can connect to have, if we had a group of students who were interested in a certain career, we could actually kind of reserve a specific person in that field who would be a presenter to them virtually, but kind of a live presenter. We haven't utilized that yet. We're looking to, next week we have a speaker coming in to do a presentation, and the administrators have asked us to do some programming when they're not in the presentation, and we're trying to see if we can get the kids on Pathful. I don't know if we can get it that quickly because we all got a little bit of a training, but I don't think any of us feel completely adept in it yet, but we're going to explore that. We have a meeting on Wednesday to see if we can put something together so that all the kids kind of get their hands on it, which I do think it'll be pretty valuable.
So part of the Path Full is Explore and Connect. And as Lisa said, we haven't really looked at it at the elementary level yet. So you can see some of the offerings that you can find, the students can find. What I want to say is when we started this process back in 17, 18, it got off to a great start. And then, as we all know, COVID hit. So this reset of revamping this and submitting it to the state is really going to give us that push we need to get going. Our students have been working on all the artifacts. They have been collecting things. For example, in kindergarten, they do a unit on listening, and first grade is community helpers and cooperation. Our second grade uses our business model from social studies, and third grade uses several artifacts, most of from virtual job shadow. But what we've done is to try to incorporate what we already have in place to make the best use of it. So sometimes you don't know what you have until you go looking, but we have some great activities for our students already. They've just become more purposeful and intentional. Okay, Lisa.
So one of the big pieces of, well, not big piece, one of the pieces of the 3-9 plan is that we needed to incorporate the community. So we do have an advisory council, and we had a really good committee in 2018, 19, 20, whenever we got it going, and then COVID hit, and so we have to re-engage the advisory council. So we've identified students, parents, educators in the community, some college folks, some business folks, and we'll be having that advisory committee meeting pretty soon.
And as you can see, this plan doesn't work unless all of the stakeholders are involved. It is critical to our community to support our students because they are the future community. So you all have a vested interest in your students. We do too. We are their teachers and their educators, but the greater community welcomes, and we want to welcome them in to give us ideas and to let us know how we can connect best with them. So if you know any interested community members, business members that you think might be a good addition to our advisory council, please let us know. Maria Wilczek is also driving that force as well.
Yeah. So this is just another screen that basically talks about the same thing, that, you know, the quality of the high school and the quality of the business and the community kind of feed off each other. I think one of the coolest things is being at the high school, as long as I have, seeing students who graduated come back as teachers in our school. I mean, that just shows, you know, what a great community we have and what a great school, and the fact that they want to work here. I think that's pretty neat. So thank you. And I want to personally thank everybody here who got us another counselor. I appreciate it, and I am so excited about him. Chris Jackson is a wonderful, he was a wonderful student, and I think he's going to be a fabulous counselor at the high school, and I can't wait to work alongside him. So I wanted to thank you for that.
In his interview, he mentioned you specifically as having an impact on him. He mentioned about 8 or 10 teachers that had an impact on him, and it was one of the best answers I've heard in several years.
What I love about the Jacksons is that they didn't mind. They weren't too proud to ask for help. They knew they needed it, and they knew the people they could get it from, and they didn't let their success be stifled because they didn't have things. They reached out and asked for it, and those of us who knew them were happy to help them. And I said to Steve Price the other day, I don't have children. I said to him, you have children, that's your legacy. The fact that I know that I had something small to do with Chris, and the fact that he's successful and he's coming back and ultimately will take my job as I get close to retirement is my legacy. Like, that made me feel really good. So, yeah.
Nice. I have a question. Sorry. I have a question about the, when we say business, are we including and being inclusive of entrepreneurship?
We'll take anybody who wants to be on it. We're trying to, off the top of our heads, find people. So we're not trying to exclude anybody. It was really, trying to find people that we.
I don't mean to, I'm sorry, let me rephrase my question. I meant more so in the program for the students, making sure that entrepreneurship is included in that curriculum so that it's not just business.
We have a section of our curriculum dedicated to it.
Okay.
Yeah, we even start in second grade. They just had their business fair. If you ever want to see anything really adorable, please come to an elementary school during the second grade business fair. It is, somebody walked out with this gigantic contraption that was made out of a box. I don't know what his mom said when he got home. I don't know how much he spent. I mean, it's pretend money. But they learn all about developing a model and then working together to create it, then selling. So it's really cute.
And we have an entrepreneurship class at the high school too. Yeah,
I'm aware of the class. I just wanted to make it.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is part of. Yeah.
And I have a question too. So I know you mentioned the tech school and the opportunities they have there, but I'm curious more specifically about the trades, because the tech school doesn't cover all the trades. They have building trades, but they don't necessarily have masonry and welding and all that kind of thing. So how prominent are those occupations in our, when we have, say, job fairs, or we have groups that come in and talk about what jobs they can have?
Carol Bucci is kind of an extra counselor in a lot of what she does. And she really has done a wonderful job in her role as transition coordinator. And she's expanded, don't tell Karen Burke, but sometimes she does things with regular ed kids too. And for example, last week she met with not so much particularly the trades, but for the students who are not college bound. She's helping them not just find jobs, but careers. She's through Pathful. She's helping them write resumes and do things if they haven't already. Most of them have, but she's helping them tweak it. And then she's going to, I don't know if it's Monco Works or something soon, where she's taking all their resumes, and there are a bunch of different jobs and different companies, and I don't know if it's trades, but a wide variety of things, like GlaxoSmithKline as an apprenticeship. There's a bunch of different things, and she will be presenting their resumes there. So, I mean, that's something that is something we never would have had time to do as counselors, and she's able to do that. And she works a lot with helping kids get apprenticeship and things like that. So, I mean, she brings people in from ABC, which is the building one. So she brings them in. She's got a good connection with them. She's got a great partnership with the old ACE Center, which is now the Union League. They want to have a whole training program, and they want our kids to be part of that, from everything from groundskeeping on golf course to service and running the hotel piece of it. Yeah. So she's really working with us.
And Carol Bucci is our transition coordinator, starting with our special ed department. We have been doing this, working with kids starting the year they turn 14, working on transition. So it's nice that there's a blending of working with students who do have extraordinary needs, and then blending with the curriculum, because it's like that universal design. What's good for one may very well be good for everybody.
Because when you were talking about like cost of education versus the profession that you get, so when I have a child who, well, not a child anymore, but 4 years of electrician's apprenticeship and no debt and starting at 80 grand a year. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that was one of the things they impressed upon us there, that both exciting and scary is for students of today. They may change careers 10 to 12 times. So where we were looking at a job, a career for us for a lifetime, so we are really focused on creating lifelong learners and kids who can problem solve and kids who are open to different things. So you are right. And the technical trades, there are a lot of careers out there where you can go with an associate's and you can start, and the most important thing is you can advance through on-the-job training or, business paid education so that you are not footing the bill for that. But you're right, there are an awful lot of opportunities out there that we are now not even aware of because there are just so many new things popping up all the time.
But I think the community is starting to see that because our tech school numbers are going up. And so that's a really good thing. So, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and for all the hard work that you put into this plan. I know it's taken a lot of time, energy. And speaking of time and energy, Dr. Scherzinger is going to enlighten us in 10 minutes, right, Felix?
10 minutes. However long you need.
A handout for everyone. Thank you, everyone, for having me this evening. I'm really happy to be here to talk a little bit about the grants that we've been awarded. And first off, I want to thank Kim Newell for all her help and support with writing the grants, following through with oversight monitoring. It really takes a team to do this. And I just want to, from People Services Department and everyone else, thank you so much for your help and support. So I have a handout for you, and I'm just going to go over briefly some of the programs, just talk a little bit more in depth in regards to what we were awarded, the programs that we're implementing, and that we hopefully will anticipate that we do with some of the grants that we've applied for. For the first, the PCCD that you see, some of you may remember we had this discussion about a grant back in 2018-19. Josh McNeil came, I think, to a committee meeting, talked about trauma-informed care programs in the school setting, and this is the grant that we were awarded and were able to implement. So you can see the outline to the far right in the column there with the programs. The professional development training that we had was delivered, the initial training was delivered face-to-face by Josh McNeil to our care teams, our crisis response teams. It was recorded for future use down the road for years to come. And what that training covered was the parts of the brain, lower, mid, and high, and adverse child experiences, and how trauma can impact the brain and regulation. And the third part of that training was wellness, taking care of ourselves. So that was the fundamental pieces of that original professional development. In addition to that, we did have video modules. There were 8, I believe, video modules that staff could register to see. It took a little bit more in-depth look at the topics of the original training, and it had some refresher activities that they could access. One of the third part of this program, the neurologic program that all 4 parts of the program are under, was the coaching services. They were web-based, they were face-to-face. And what Lakeside did provide to us were several professionals who came to deliver coaching services to our teachers, to our administrators, to our staff members, to really go over situations with no student names, it was anonymous, but to go over some behaviors of concern that made barriers to learning, and looking at troubleshooting those concerns through the trauma-informed care lens. So putting those principles, those constructs of trauma-informed care to practice. And they were able to meet with someone one-to-one, whether it be virtual or face-to-face, and really hash out some plans to help support their students as a whole. We had a tremendous response in regards to the receptiveness of the staff that did participate in those coaching services. They found it very valuable. So I was very happy about that. Student assemblies, Lakeside did put a moratorium because of the COVID pandemic. We probably started this maybe right before, or I want to say as during, with the pandemic. Student assemblies were just not possible. So the funds that were allotted towards student assemblies were diverted to more coaching hours. And then you can see also to something more recent, to a professional development, a 1 hour that we had just done on February 17th. Josh McNeil came back under a different umbrella, not Lakeside, but did come back and went to all of our 7 buildings. And you can see, did a little more professional development with the neuro development approach, but really, honestly, in a nutshell, tangible strategies to help our students manage stress. That really what it was. And through that process, it was forming relationships with our students. And that's what they really honed in on. And again, the response from teachers and administrators was wonderful. And the idea is really in this capacity to move from trauma-informed to being trauma responsive in the classroom. So using some of those skills, using some of those practices and constructs and principles along the way for better outcomes. So that was the first grant, as you can see. The second grant circled around suicide prevention and intervention. And the grant was for Dr. Terry Erbacher, who has been our expert advisor in developing our approach, our policies, our systematic way how we respond to suicidal threats and gestures. Dr. Erbacher did actually train all of our crisis response teams back in November of 2017. That was the original training that she had done for our crisis response teams. And then with the pandemic, we had her come back out in May of 2021, and she delivered the training that is here under the grant, clinical assessment and management of suicide risk in a virtual world. Act 17 requires school districts to have policies and procedures that specifically outline how schools respond to students at suicidal risk with screening and assessment. We needed to fine-tune how we do that in a virtual world. So if there's something that happens online, we trained and do we know, some of the best practices out there to be able to address those concerns virtually. The training was very helpful, and we've probably done, I think, 4 to 5 turnaround trainings, because since that time we've had new counselors come as folks retire, as new staff comes on. Everyone on the crisis response teams must be trained, so we've done about 4 or 5 turnaround trainings of Dr. Erbacher's training. The third grant that some parts of the grant are present and some are anticipated. The first part, the full-time licensed mental health counselor. So in addition, I'm sure all of you are aware that we do have community counselors, in-school counselors across K through 12 through Lincoln and Lakeside. We also have a newer service, a licensed mental health counselor from Lakeside, Kim McShane, I believe, that does see students individually at the secondary level. She is part-time, and we are looking to expand her hours to full-time for this grant. The second part of the third grant, mobile clinician services through the Montgomery County IU. We do currently use, and we do have worked with many times with Montgomery County Mobile Crisis Support Service. This particular service through the IU, very similar in function that they do, would allow us to have our own mobile crisis team on an as-needed basis. Remember, Mobile Crisis Support Service, the community-based organization Access Services, not medical assistance access, but access the organization. They're servicing the entire Montgomery County, and they have done a fantastic job, a wonderful job. This gives us a backup. team to call upon to help us support students in regards to when a suicide threat is made, a homicide threat assessment. They will come in and work with us to implement the screenings, the assessments, the follow-up. One of the things in addition that they will do is the transfer to the service that's being recommended. So for example, bed availability. A lot of us are aware that there are very few and far between inpatient psychiatric beds available when recommended for children and adolescents. This mobile team from the Montgomery County IU will help the family with the bed search, will help the family support them when they, if need to go to the emergency room to provide that. So a very helpful service and it will serve as a backup with our Montgomery County Mobile Crisis Support Service. Threat assessment team training. This one I'm very excited about. Threat assessment, part of Act 18, that we are required to train all of our crisis response team members in threat assessment. We've had an interesting trajectory with that training. Our first training was with Dr. Erbacher, oh my gosh, I want to say 2019, I believe in June. And Dr. Erbacher came out and trained all of our threat assessment teams in the principles of threat assessment. And what we saw over the course of the year through working with the SAP Regional Council, other school districts, is that districts were shifting towards looking at, taking a closer look and training their teams on the VSTAG model, the Virginia Student Threat Assessment Guidelines model, which the IU called CSTAG, Comprehensive Student Threat Assessment Guidelines Model. This is a national model, so we brought the IU in, I want to say in February of 20. They came, they trained all of our crisis response team members again in threat assessment in the model, the CSTAG model. And what we're seeing now is a movement towards PCCD's model, the Pennsylvania State K-12 model. This is the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquencies model. This is exciting because this threat assessment model incorporates the risk assessment protocols of Act 71, the state. So you've got that national model that we are trained in, but the PCCD model is focusing threat assessment on things like safe to say, focusing things on our SAP teams under Pennsylvania state law, focusing things on how to implement threat assessment specific to Pennsylvania's legislation on suicidal ideation, Act 17, Act 18 threat assessment. So much more reflective of the state. So this training we are, I believe, slated for June, one training over the summer to offer for admin. It is a full day training and then another in the school year to hopefully catch everyone else if they can't make it over the summer. And then the fourth piece of this grant, anxiety prevention activities at the high school. I want to thank Lisa Genovese for helping to implement this. These are yoga activities. These are activities that are available to students and to staff, yoga specifically. I think it's Yoga Home that is coming to the high school to deliver these services on is it a weekly? Tuesdays and I believe we had 9 students. Wonderful.
Where do they go if they're interested? At 710?
Do they have to sign up in advance, or they can just show up?
Part of wellness. And then the fourth grant, Behavioral Health Restorative Practices Initiative. So this grant we just recently submitted about a week ago. And what we're looking for is one full-time restorative practice community or in-school counselor at Colonial Middle School. And in addition to that, we would like to send representatives from each building to a train the trainer training and professional development on restorative practices, so that all buildings have knowledge of restorative practices, and to consider these principles, consider these constructs when supporting students. And the idea of the restorative practice for this staff person, to help foster, build those healthy relationships, encourage safe and supportive school environment, to give students the tools to resolve conflict, and to reduce the disciplinary incidences, particularly suspensions and alternative placements, that do take students out of school. So this staff member would be conferencing, they would be doing preventative and post-conflict resolutions, and social and emotional skill instruction. So those are the 4 grants that we've done, and hopefully anticipate the award of the last 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you
job,
very much.
Felix. So as you can see, we're really doing quite a bit, both preventatively and also reacting to some areas where we have challenges, so that we can prevent those behaviors moving forward. We want to make sure that all of our kids and teachers have the tools that they need to make sure that we keep kids and staff safe. So are there any questions that anybody has for Felix? Felix has been pivotal, along with Kim Newell, working on writing these grants and submitting these grants, fine-tuning these grants, making corrections for these grants. So I thank you very much. Next on the agenda, it actually ties into this, and it's something that I know Chris has brought up numerous times, and actually it was mentioned tonight in the presentation that Conshohocken, who it was it? Elise. Who was it? Elise. Yeah, Elise Johnson brought forward for in talking about emotional regulation, and one of those is self-calming, calming corners, calming areas in a room. And so we do see kids at the high school, kids at the middle school, who do experience anxiety and who do experience stress. And one of the things that we encourage kids in this emotional regulation is to do some self-soothing. And so we were trying to figure out a way that we could incorporate this, being mindful of the fact that we have to have the staff to support this as well. If we have students who are in periods of upset or in periods of angst, the last thing we want to do is put them in a place or have them go to a place where they can't be monitored. That would be devastating, or could be devastating, and we certainly don't want to do that. So I have spoken with our community counselor at the high school, who's been working with a lot of these students, and we came up with some ideas that would not involve extra staff, but maybe utilize staff that we currently have. An example being, and certainly these were just things we were trying to brainstorm, I asked her if she would scope out the library at the high school, for example, and see if there were corners where maybe we could put a very, very comfortable chair that swivels, and that have at the disposal there headphones where students could access music, something that would be calming, coloring books, a place where someone knits, someone sews, just something to self-calm, a chair that swiveled where they could face a window or face a corner for that privacy. These would be students that we would hope that we would want to have gone through the care team first, have something written in a behavioral plan, a 504 plan, an IEP, so that we can monitor this, where a student might go to the library, for example, sign in at the desk for a 10-minute interval, and then go to the corner, do their calming, and at which point the they could time it, and when the 10 minutes are up, sign out. If at that point they're requesting additional time, I think that's a red flag, and we would ask that the librarian, the media specialist, reach out to the guidance office to have somebody come down and help process that. We would also want to keep that sign-in and sign-out sheet with the care team so that they can monitor if students are frequent visitors. We certainly want to make sure that kids are not escaping and avoiding class. So all of these things would have to be monitored, and that would be something that we've done through the care team process. So that's just one idea. And so I spoke with Mr. Kaplan at the middle school, and he thought that that would be doable in their library as well. So we would possibly go to our Ed Foundation and see if maybe we could perhaps ask for some comfortable chairs that and a little table that the students could use for this method. So, and it's certainly a way that students take ownership of their emotional regulation. And I think that that would have wonderful benefits moving.
Karen, thank you. I think this is going to be extremely helpful. Just a question of clarity. So did you say that the ability to utilize the space would be only for those with IEP and 504 plans, or is it available to all students?
So I'm thinking that this would be something that would initially be something that would be monitored through the care team. So we have a way to monitor any students who are having difficulties. Certainly, I would think any student who's going into the library could sign to use one of the calming centers. But for those who may be leaving class, or those who may be having to be in a moment of crisis, that we would want that to go through care.
But it could be any student. I'm just trying to make sure that
if they
it could
were
be any
already
student.
if they had a period maybe during lunch and they wanted to go to the library or somebody, but for purposes of identifying those kids who needed it for emotional regulation, where we were working with them for prevention, that might be something that we would look at too as a means of record keeping. That's all. But yes, we could use that for any student.
I just want to make sure because you know
No, we
we all probably, I mean, adults, right? We need that emotional regulation at some point, and I'm just thinking,
and I think
like
we
in
have
high
to fine
school-
tune it. This is something that we're just looking at and just exploring.
I think with students that don't necessarily have an IEP or a 504 for anxiety, if they're having an issue, they would go to the counselor's office first as a first step, and not because that's important if they're having feelings of like that they would go to the counselor first.
But they may not. I mean, I have firsthand experience, and they don't always do that because of the fear of other people knowing that that's what they're going for. And so if you have the space in the library, and so if it's a person who doesn't have an IEP or 501(c)(4) plan, and they just have anxiety, because anxiety and having a plan does not necessarily equal, right? You don't have to have the both to be
right
to have anxiety, and so it's important that we recognize that those students that don't necessarily have those plans may still have anxiety, and it may be a long-term thing, but it also could be just temporary because of maybe the stress of keystones, the stress of testing, whatever the case may be. So just making sure that it's available to all students, and nobody feels like they're being turned away because they don't fit into a certain category.
And we would certainly want those students to sign in as well, and the care team would look at that, because if we see people or students who are frequently using that, we would want to make sure that we were addressing the needs of the student and not overlooking anything. So, like I said, we're really in the beginning stages of this, and it's certainly something that we can start piloting this year, if we get a chair or four. But I think it's something that offers a great deal of promise. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Any questions about that? And certainly any ideas are welcome. They're always with new ideas like this. any ideas are certainly helpful. Thinking outside the box is a mantra.
I have a question, I guess kind of a follow-up to what Gail was saying. It sounds like some of this is just teaching our children how to recognize within themselves when they need a moment and how to, to address their own emotional needs. So my question is, like I was saying, for children that don't have an IEP, it's almost like, how do we make this almost a tier 1 offering for students as we teach them how to address their own emotional regulation? And then as a follow-up, do we offer that in any other spaces? Like, is there a quiet room during bonus block that students can access where they don't actually have to do any kind of work and there's no expectation of, it's not really a study hall, they can just sit with soft music, so children that don't necessarily need to access this quiet chair, but do have time during the day to just exhale in a quiet space? Do we offer something like that so that children can learn? And then also for this quiet chair in the space, how do we communicate to students that this is a space available for you? So maybe you are having anxiety about a test. Maybe you just had a really bad moment where you argued with a sibling or a parent and you came in and you just need to decompress so you can address your day. How do we communicate to students that this is a normal practice? It doesn't mean that there's a challenge coming. If it's a repeated issue, maybe we start to recognize that, but just to teach children how to decompress, how to recognize those feelings of tension in their own body and to seek out help. And how do we offer on a regular basis, maybe during that, that bonus block where they can just go and just breathe. Like maybe even the yoga class is offered during bonus block for children that want to spend some time just reducing the temperature.
I think this is something that we need to just look into and utilize our care teams to come up with ideas for their buildings to see how we can best implement that. There's certainly some opportunities to incorporate this. We certainly at the middle school have our BOTFIN Life Skills Program, which is an emotional learning program and talks about reducing stress. We do that as well as in the 4-5 building and also as part of Second Step in the K-3 programs. So all that is incorporated in it and talking about emotional regulation, but offering actual places and activities may not be. I know that there are calming centers in classrooms at the elementary level. So
I think
there's
there's
calming
students
corners.
who sign up for specific bonus blocks because they know it's a quiet place to go to, but that's just by the nature of that particular bonus block. We could be a little more intentional and then organize something around it where, we create, because we have the ability, we can create our own bonus blocks. So maybe just take it one step further, as you're suggesting, is a good idea.
And just to comment, so I think as I was listening, that it could also be a preventative measure to like intense situations. So if someone is going through something or whatever, and someone said something to them and it triggered them, if they know that they have the ability to go to this calming space to get calmed down, it could prevent another situation from occurring as a result of it.
Yep. So thanks for bringing that to the table, and we're going to continue to work on it through our care team process. Any questions? Comments?
Hi, my name is Parker Powley. I'm a junior at PW. And in my personal experience, a lot of programs that are offered by the school, like the yoga, for example, like 9 students, that is nice, but not that many people utilize it. And I think having administrators and school board members being the ones that devise, the plans to best meet student needs may not always be the best path forward. Right? I think asking students and seeing students' perspectives and what potential solutions they have would be the best way to accommodate, all the individual needs students have. Some people might be, every single student I know is stressed about something sometime, right? And hearing from them and hearing how their issues could best be solved and what practically would be utilized by students during the school day. I think it's an important aspect in developing any sort of program to meet student needs, especially regarding stress and mental health.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent point, Parker. That's a great point. All right.
Policies?
Yeah, last item is our policy. Well, there are 3 deletions for policies. 2 deletions, sorry about that. Okay. So deletions, get that up there. The suicide, deleting policy number 251, which is suicide intervention. That language is now covered in policy 819, which is suicide awareness, prevention, and response. So we really don't need policy 251. Policy 253 is homeless children, and that would be replaced by policy 251, which we're going to do a first read on today, which would be homeless students. And this covers the current, much more current and detailed information through the McKinney-Vento Act. And certainly does provide with more definitions of homeless, the delegation of responsibility, the guidelines for enrollment and placement, and also pertaining to education records, transportation, and training of homeless students. So I don't know if you have all had the opportunity to look through. The only change that was made to, or the recommended to be made, was the am I doing that? Sorry. Delegation of responsibility, and the PSBA had a director of pupil services, and when I ran this by our home and school visitor, she said she serves as the liaison and would prefer to be the point of contact, and I was happy to hand the baton to her. And she does an excellent job with this, I must say.
Can I just ask a question, just a general question with homeless students? When such student is identified, what do we do? I mean, do we pull in a SAP team for that student? I mean, I would think there's a host of issues if a student is homeless. So, how do we, as a district, reach out the olive branch to try to help that student with?
And that's what our home and school visitor does. The home and school visitor reaches out to the family and works with the student through our care teams, and works to make sure that the student is getting what he or she needs, as well as the family.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So are there any questions about that? So then this would be considered, I guess, the first read. Okay.
Actually, Thursday will be the first.
Thursday would be 3. Thank you.
Yep. So if the board has any questions or potential changes, they should contact Karen or myself, and we'll get them corrected before Thursday night.
Is there any public comment? No? Any board comment, questions? Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
I will admit that my last comment about hold the phone higher was uncalled for.
Teacher, and I tried to send you something.
A middle finger.
That I did. This is what I wanted to say.